Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. A lot going on. The ever-changing world of health and safety protocols. Looks like we could be in store for another set of changes, perhaps shortening the amount of time that players actually have to stay away from the court. We'll also break down some of the latest trade talks. Keith Smith joining me as always. Find him on Twitter at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, what's going on here? It sounds like the NBA is going to change the COVID rules once again.
Yeah, we had heard Adam Silver when he interviewed with Malika Andrews, or was interviewed by Malika Andrews, I should say. Interviewed with sounds like he was looking for a job on NBA Today.
I think
Which
they
would
would
be
take
kind of
him.
funny.
They would say hired, right?
Probably.
They would say
Yeah,
you're in, man. You're in.
yeah, that's it. He probably doesn't need to interview, right? Just
No.
makes a call. Um, she asked if they would look at an NFL type model of reducing the amount of time players need to be out. Would it be different for vaccinated versus unvaccinated and those kind of things? And he said at this time, that's not something we're talking about, but we're open to it. We'll discuss everything with the Players Association and go. And then I think in the only couple of days since then, we started to hear steam picking up of that is something the league is looking at. And then
Mhm.
today, the top two news guys in the business, Sham Sharani and Adrian Wojnarowski, both reported that we're headed down that path. And it sounds like what they're going to do for vaccinated players who are asymptomatic, sounds like they're going to reduce their time from 10 days to 6 days. If you have symptoms or you're not vaccinated, it's going to remain the different protocols for them. And that'll be, basically trying to keep everybody healthy. But it sounds like we're going to get this shortened down here to little more than half of what it was.
And for a league that is still scrambling right now to get enough hardship players in order to continue playing games, hopefully not postpone many more games, they're doing everything they can. This just helps that cause, right? If you're
Big
having
time.
guys back after 6 days instead of 10 days, that certainly matters. And so this is something where we could see players on the court who wouldn't have been previously, and that again with the main goal of not postponing games being out there. This is going to help in that endeavor. And again, I like that they mentioned that they're looking at some of the studies, some of the results, finding out whether or not this is a safe thing to do as well. This isn't just we can't postpone games. It's about money. Like those things are important, but I also like that they're going based on the research and using that to help determine what they're going to do here.
Yeah, and the reality is there's going to be folks out there that are going to really hammer the league on
Sure.
this and say this is just billionaires trying to push people to play and all that. But that's not what this is. The vast majority of players want to play. We're seeing guys every single. I think Malik Monk yesterday or this morning tweeted, "Free me." He wants to play,
Right.
and he's far from the only one who's in the protocols. Multiple guys have said, "I want to play. I feel fine." Trey Young talked about it recently. So now you have a few on the other side that were saying, "Hey, we should probably pause and shut down." It's no different than society, right? There's people on both sides of these issues in the real non-basketball world too.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, the vast majority of the players, they want to play. They don't want to have to sit out. They want to get out there. There's a lot of guys who have openly said now they're very upset that they may have to miss the Christmas Day games. For some of these guys, this may be the only time they get to play on Christmas. For
Yeah.
some of these other guys, they're probably like, I'm good. I've done it, like LeBron's done it, what, probably 15, 16 times
Yeah.
now. So he's sure for him, he's like, I don't need to play on Christmas. I wouldn't mind waking up and hanging out with the family. But for a lot of these other guys, it's, this may be their only shot. They're looking at it as, man, I'm going to miss out on this. And that's why, you combine it together. The NBA doesn't make these changes and decisions unilaterally. They make them with the Players Association. Players Association does their best to take care of all of their members, but knowing not all of their members are going to completely be on board and agree with this, but they do it by majority and off they go. So yeah, I think we're going to see these shortened down here in the next day or two, and then we'll start getting these guys back in 6 days. What's that? 2, 3 games for
Yeah.
most
Mm-hmm.
teams that a guy will miss, probably closer to three, playing about every other day or so, and that's not the end of the world. You ought to be able to get through that. That's kind of like rolling an ankle, and a
Sure.
guy, you don't go out looking for somebody to replace a guy who's going to be out for a week, and that's essentially what we're talking about.
Well, but now the NBA new rules also say that you have to replace that guy, right? And depending on how many players you have healthy, in some
Correct.
cases you do have to replace that guy. Now, again,
And I think we'll
will
see that change too.
yeah, they can. I was going
As
to say
kids,
they can
yeah,
change that too
yeah,
as they. I mean, they're adjusting on the fly, day by day,
yep,
week by week here. So that may be something that shifts as well.
absolutely, yeah, yeah. I think you're going to see maybe they do a 5-day contract for these hardships versus a 10-day, and it's hey, get a guy out. Maybe they'll limit it to you got to pull him direct from your G League team or something
Sure.
like that. That's probably less likely because the Players Association wants freedom of movement for their guys. But yeah, I don't think we're gonna see this be the way it was. I think we're gonna see a lot of these guys. All right, hey, go sit out your 6 days. We'll see you in a week, and let's get back at it. And I think that's where we're headed.
Yeah, yeah, it does seem to be going that way. Speaking of hardship signings, though, we did have a few of them, not as
Yeah, a
many,
couple.
but I guess I've seen fans from a lot of teams saying Daniel House, get us
Yep.
Daniel House. It turns out he is going to the New York Knicks, and Keith, you talked about on here that he's not quite the guy that people are remembering, or at least he hasn't been. But
Right.
still, he'll get an opportunity here to show that he's better than what the Rockets thought he was in New York.
Yeah, I mean, there's part of the reality is the Rockets just waived this guy to replace him with a player coming off a two-way. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Garrison Matthews can really play. He's one of the best shooters in the league. I think now I feel confident saying that after 2-3 years of seeing what he can do as a shooter. So I think the Rockets really went into it with he's just a better fit for what we need right now. And Daniel House is not part of our future, so we're moving on. And then I think if you're the Knicks they need a little bit more size on the wing right now. So we'll see where that goes. We're going to talk about another thing that happened with the Knicks where maybe they could have used a guard.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get into that here in just a minute. But yeah, he's going to get a shot. This is one of those where I mean the vast majority of these 10-day hardship guys, they're not going to swing things one way or another. It's
Yeah.
going to be what it is. But that said, you have the one end of the spectrum of Joe Johnson, Lance Stevenson, these
Right.
legends of the game coming back and getting one more run, and that's kind of cool. And on the other side, you have a guy like Hassani Gravett, started at point guard for the Orlando Magic. Never would have happened under normal
Mm-hmm.
circumstances, and he was so grateful and thankful for that opportunity, and that's pretty cool too. So, it's one of those where I said you're making really terrible lemonade out of some probably spoiled lemons, but just make the best of it, and we'll move on.
It is truly the silver lining to all of this. You did mention the Knicks and their need for a guard. Derrick Rose going to be out now for 8 weeks due to
Yep.
ankle surgery. That's Derrick Rose, especially last season, played extremely well for the Knicks, so they're going to have to figure out a way to get by without him. You're right. Maybe they would have leaned towards finding a guard instead of Daniel House, but the Knicks are going to have to figure out a way. And you know what? They've had their own challenges this season. We've seen Kemba Walker in and out of the rotation as well. But Derrick Rose was that guy they can kind of count on to come in and score some points off the bench, and now they're going to be without him for a bit.
Yeah, and Rose missed time earlier this year
Mm-hmm.
with a sore ankle. Then he kind of came back when it was we're dropping Kemba from the rotation. Then Alec Burks went out, and then Rose had to start move into the starting group, and then it just got worse. I think it's probably a little bit one of those where we've talked about this with older players. Something is bothering them, and they just can't get past it
Yeah.
the way they used to be able to. And then it ultimately, a lot of times, as in the case with Rose, it's become surgical, and now he's going to be out for 8 weeks. Adrian Wojnarowski reported maybe 6 weeks. There's some optimism. Maybe he can get back in 6 weeks. The team release said 8, but yeah, we're going to see ultimately where that goes. In the end here, they did sign Damian Dotson and Matt Mooney, a couple ball handler-ish players. Dotson more of an off-ball guy to come in because Emmanuel Quickly, Deuce McBride, their second-round pick this year. They're both in the health and safety protocols. And then Kemba, as you said, he's back in the rotation now and starting. And my guess is that probably sticks at least for a little while here until Rose is back and going.
Yeah, and Trevor Ariza dealt with a similar situation with the ankle, where it was just kind of a nagging thing, and then finally they said, yeah, he's not going to be able to get past this. Maybe it's just being an older player or whatever, but ultimately it's led to surgery for Derrick Rose. Hopefully he was able to get back to 100%. And for the Knicks, you got to hope that some of these other guys can really step up, fill that void, and move them along.
Yeah, and you can, if you're the Knicks, you can get away with a little bit playing less traditional point guards,
Hmm.
because Julius Randle and RJ
Can handle the
Barrett, who's
ball.
now coming out, they handle the ball so much and do so many things. So you can get away with it a little. That's why they were comfortable starting Alec Burks there in that. But so we'll see, what they do. Maybe Tibbs gets a little more creative with his lineups again and does some changes as they finally are. Looks like they're one of the teams that's getting closer to starting to clear the health and safety protocols with a lot of their players.
Alex Caruso, to jump over to the Chicago Bulls, out again 7 to 10 days with a left foot sprain. The Bulls obviously got hit hard by health and safety protocols, had a few games get postponed, and now they will be without Alex Caruso once again. He's really made a positive impact for that team this
Big
season,
time.
so hopefully he can get back sooner rather than later. But again, 7 to 10 days. The Bulls are just going to, again, have to go back and weather the storm.
Yeah, and the Bulls, I thought it was interesting. Billy Donovan talked about they added Ersan Ilyasova and then
Mhm.
South Bay Laker Mac McClung that we talked about on a hardship for
Yeah.
each of those guys. But he talked about how they may not even play them and they may not even be able to play them because they're starting to get guys clearing the
Right.
protocols, which that's not the worst thing. And how that works, if that happens, is if you don't have hardship space for those players, you have to make a roster decision and get back into roster compliance. In 99 times out of 100, maybe even 999 out of 1,000, you're gonna waive the player who was on the hardship.
Right.
And what essentially happens is you end the 10-day contract immediately. They immediately go back to free agency, and then but the player still gets the full 10-day amount paid out to them. In this case, these ones, there's no cap and tax it, but normally you would eat the full cap and tax it as well. And so nothing really changes from them. Otherwise, they just don't have a shot. But that's kind of the best case scenario for most
Mhm.
of these is, we didn't have to use them. And now our guys are coming back because Zach Levine cleared today. But we got to remember these guys can clear health and safety protocols, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're ready to play that day. Some of them are. DeMar DeRozan is a good example. Played and
Mhm.
played really well day one out. But then other guys, Justin Holiday of the Pacers, he needed about 3-4 days to kind of feel good conditioning wise. And everybody's different. So just something to keep an eye on. When you hear a guy clearing, that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to play, in the very next game.
And for these guys that are on these hardship contracts, these 10-day deals, of course they want to play. They want to get the
Sure.
opportunity to go out there and show their stuff and be that guy that seizes the opportunity and turn some heads, right? Gets people to notice them. Most of them are not going to be in that situation where they wind up sticking in the NBA. But at the very least, even if they get called up, they don't get to play at all, and then they get cut right away because somebody comes out of health and safety protocols, it's still not a bad little paycheck to get, especially
No,
here right
yeah.
before Christmas. So
Yeah,
you're getting
absolutely.
that too.
It's good work if you can find it, right? I will take it happily if anybody wants to side an overweight aging 40-plus-year-old to a 10-day. I'm happy to put my name on that dotted line. I will fly wherever, and you can stick swabs up my nose and clear me and be ready to play. And then, God forbid, I actually have to get on the court. But I promise you, if I see a shot's going up. I don't care where I catch that. I will Andrew Bynum it and throw it from full court if I have to. I'm getting a shot up. I'm not going to be getting the trillion of the 1 minute with zeros all across the board. The shot's going to get tossed up there.
Joe Johnson style. You're going to take the shot.
Yeah,
You're going to
ISO
take the
Joe,
shot.
man.
Yep. Get
Hey,
it
that was
done.
fun. That was fun yesterday. With that, I'll say this too. One of the things that, just because it was asked, why are some of these teams signing older players like the Celtics signed Joe Johnson and CJ Miles, and Ime Udoka kind of gave a not super direct answer, but basically said, we didn't want any projects. We wanted guys who are veterans who can come in and know what we're asking. I talked to a couple of people with the organization. They basically said, look, we don't need some kid coming in here who's trying to, really show and earn a spot. And he's flying all around and banging into guys in
Right.
practice and all this stuff. We just needed a couple guys who get it. They know
Yeah.
what we're asking of them. They're, please be here as a body if we need you for, the next couple weeks, and then off we go. And that's why you're seeing some of these teams opt for older players. Now, a team like Orlando, they called up a whole bunch of younger guys because I think for them, it's, hey, we're in the diamond mining process. If somebody pops and we're like,
Yeah.
oh, that guy's interesting, maybe there can be a long-term home for a player like that.
And that's an interesting point to make too. When you're a team, right, that is looking to bring in somebody to just play 5-10 minutes, maybe, right? Max. That's
Yeah.
all you're going to play these guys. If you're in that situation, for a lot of teams, the thought process is not, let's go find somebody that's going to win the game for us. No, you're looking actually at the opposite. You're looking for somebody who is not going to lose the game
Yep.
for you, right? Somebody who
Yep.
you can put in and their plus minus is ideally just going to be 0 during that time. They're not going to hurt you. You can't really expect them to help you, but they're not going to be a negative and hurt you out there on the floor. And so most likely, if you find a guy who's been in the NBA for a long time, you can go to them and say, hey, these are our schemes. This is our coverage. This is where we need you to be. And they're going to get those things. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to be able to execute those things as well because they've thought the game at that level before, even if physically they're not quite able to do the things they were used to, but they can put themselves in the right position most of the time when they're out there on the floor still, where the younger guys can't do that. So I do understand that mentality, particularly if you've got more of a win now team. Makes a lot of sense to look at these veterans.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're just trying to get by. You're
Yep.
just trying to get through the next couple of weeks where some of these other teams are, hey, let's use this as an opportunity to evaluate some young talent. And neither approach is wrong. It is highly dependent on your situation as a team.
Speaking of evaluating talent, Keith, we talked about this just a little bit before we came on the air here. Trade talks around the NBA, it felt like for a few days there, the trade rumblings were just growing louder and louder and louder. And now they've kind of quieted down a little bit.
Yep.
And part of that is teams are scrambling to find players to be in compliance with the NBA and their new rules. But you said that you did some checking around the NBA too and had something to share in terms of the trade situation.
Yeah, so I was asking different front office executives. I'm like, what's going on right now? And the ones who got back to me, which some of them did not, and there's a good reason why, is let's say everything was progressing as it had been about 2 weeks ago before these big COVID outbreaks. The trade window opened officially about a week ago on December 15th. That's when the vast majority of players who were signed over the offseason could be moved. And then earlier this week, the entire league kind of was scheduled to descend on Las Vegas for the G League showcase. And yeah, it's about evaluating the G League guys, but a lot of it, this is like the NBA winter meetings. It's everybody's in there together, and GMs can sit down and hash out trades over lunch or coffee or whatever. If it's a little later in the day, a beer or a glass of wine, whatever they want to do. But what ultimately happened is a lot of people did not go because it was, hey, I don't want to risk getting sick, or I'm already sick in some cases, or I'm at least positive for COVID or whatever the case is. Now that doesn't mean trade talks have to stop, because there's texts, there's emails, there's phones, there's everything else. But what's happened is I talked to one team and they were like, yeah, we had to completely cut off talks because we are basically in a position where we had to sign so many guys to get it done. And one of the stories that this executive told me was, we thought we had a guy, we thought he was all locked up, and then we get a call from his agent, and he was on a plane headed to another team because there was a better opportunity for him. So that was, are we going to turn around and get somebody else? And he's like, and that's just how it works until these guys are signed. They're not yours, and no ill will towards the player because they didn't have anything guaranteed and locked in. It was just, that's where they thought it was going. So all the teams, I mean, we're up to 23 of the 30 teams right now currently have a player in the health and safety protocols.
Right.
So that's tells you, we're over 50 something odd hardship deals. That's a lot of scrambling around, and you don't have time to be sitting there saying, hey, so I dreamed up this 3 or 4 team trade where we're moving multiple people around.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, I don't even know who's starting for me tomorrow, because I don't even know who's going to be available. So trade talks have not stopped, but they've really kind of grounded close to a halt here. There's very little happening right now. Everybody's kind of hopeful that let's get by the first of the year. Let's really go. Now, that's also not uncommon. Let's be realistic. We said leading up to this, Terrence Williams was the last player traded on a December 15th date, and that was about 15 years ago. So pretty uncommon to see those anyway. So we're not exactly like out of bounds with the way things are going. Most trades will come in sometime in January leading up to the trade deadline in that month-long window. But right now, things are just, priorities have shifted for teams. It's a survive and advance a day right now is kind of how most are thinking about it.
it's not really an arms race because that's not what teams are doing, but you're just you're competing for resources in terms of hardship players that can just step in and do something for you. It's kind of like when all the COVID stuff first started hitting, going on 2 years ago now, a year and a half ago, whatever it was. And remember, all the paper products were out, right? Everywhere.
Yeah.
And people going for paper towels. It was no longer like getting your ideal brand of paper towel, getting the one that's going to be the most absorbent or whatever. It's like you find that weird off-brand paper towel somewhere hidden on a shelf back behind 5 other things, and you celebrate. You're like, yes, I got it, right? That's what teams are doing right now. They're competing to find whatever they can in terms of players to come in and fill these roles for them. And so, again, they're not making these big major moves right now. This is about, can I just get something to hold me over for the time being? And then once we get through this, then they'll start focusing again on making those trades that are going to help them moving forward.
Yeah, I'm glad you used paper towels and not toilet paper, because that analogy could have gone really weird directions. So, well done.
That was very much on purpose. Wasn't comfortable going that route.
That discretion.
Oh man! All right. Well, we'll see where all this goes. Obviously, the Christmas Day games. NBA is still keeping a close eye on things. We did hear James Harden is back out of protocol, so hopefully he's available for Christmas Day. But the NBA is preparing for potentially having to postpone some of those games if we do go that route. We know Trevor Ariza just went into health and safety protocols a few hours ago, so we'll see what happens with all these teams that are playing on Christmas Day. But hopefully, all these games are able to go off without a hitch. We have a number of games being played tonight. Then we get Christmas Eve, and then hopefully we'll get to enjoy our Christmas Day games. Keith, it would be nice to just have a fairly normal Christmas. I know a lot of players are going to be out and things like that, but as normal as possible anyway. I would love to see NBA games all throughout the day.
Yeah, same with me. I will kind of add to what you were saying, though. If you've got tickets or you're planning anything around watching your game, keep an eye on it. The NBA said all the way up until Christmas Eve, they may move games if they have to, and they'll shift and adjust. They want to kind of keep that midday window, that like 2 to like 8 p.m. window, full of action if they can, as best they can. But yeah, let's hope. I mean, we're starting to see, I think, enough guys clear that I think we're going to get all 5 games played as scheduled. It just may not be the guys you really thought you were going to have, but it is what it is. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Could very well be a fun day regardless. All right, everybody. Appreciate all the support over here on the NBA Front Office YouTube channel. Make sure you do hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications as well. And if you're listening to the podcast version of this, make sure you do follow us over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.